Hey, welcome everybody. Yes, today is day 3 of Cyber Week Scotland, and today we have a fantastic guest in the studio today. Well, kind of, and but now she's an internationally renowned incident responder, ethical hacker, provides loads of stuff, and I wanted to introduce to you today Chris Quebecer, which is the CEO of HIPAASEC. And today we could mostly talk about roles in InfoSec and what all that is about. But just as a little bit of a background, both of us are military veterans. We had done some other stuff first in the military, then moved over to the private sector, and then somehow, because we have those backgrounds, we've sort of migrated between various different government organizations and organizations that are responsible for state security and stuff like that. So I'm super happy to have Chris on today because it's always super fun to talk to her. So Chris, just give us a quick introduction about yourself and let's go for it.
All right. So my name is Chris Quebecer, and I'm the CEO of my own company in the Netherlands. And I'm also the Distinguished Chair for the Middle East Institute's Cyber Program. And I do a lot of very interesting things. I am both technical and I also help write policy and even things like peace treaties for various governments and trading blocks. So, yeah, fun times.
So these kind of things that you're involved in, is it so purely based on cyber? Is it based on just how to handle incidents, or just in general? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly. So it's a can be a bit broad. At times it can cover any sort of cyber conflict, also taking into account human rights and how human rights are affected by the digital world, and also emerging technology such as quantum. I don't want to get too buzzwordy.
Uh huh.
6G and beyond, space cyber, which is a big concern because there's a big space race towards the moon and Mars right now, and space-based internet communications to provide internet to places that currently aren't being serviced, such as even areas that are in the rural parts of the United Kingdom. So it can cover a bit broad,
Mm-hmm.
but it all has a digital fingerprint on it.
Yeah, and all of these kind of things are relatively new things. Things that didn't really exist 10 years ago. Things things that we're finding all of these new types of roles, being an Internet of Things, being controlling stuff in space in factories, or maybe just even getting stuff out to rural areas. I mean, so we're trying to eliminate all the not spots and so on. So I think over the last sort of couple of years, it's changed massively, and by it I mean what we can do as a cyber career, because it's no longer I'm a hacker, I'm a um, you know it's no longer just confined to a very small group of people or a small subset of people. It's now so wide, and we'll get down to some more of those roles and so on. So, and it it also makes it like super complicated now for anybody coming in to this as a career, because it's so wide. There's so much to learn, and you're gonna have to try and focus and see, okay, what is the thing I'm gonna be doing? What am I good at? What is the thing that people would want me to do, or am I just going to join the mainstream of people that I either just want to be a red teamer, a blue teamer, a purple teamer, or just do you want to actually be part of something else within cyber? So And it's fantastic to see that, there are people like you, wonderful people like you, that that are sort of breaking all these barriers down for folks to say, hey, we need to focus on these kind of things. There's standards and stuff that we need to implement. There's standards and stuff that we would want people to have, because at the moment, still, believe it or not, with all the breaches and stuff going on, it's the Wild West. It's still bad guys ride into town, shoot up the town, and they leave a trail of mayhem, in their wake. So, yeah. So talking about mayhem in your wake, so I have to bring this up. Sorry, because every cool hacker story starts off with as a young kid. So now you started off really young, started programming really young, and so on. And then you did a cool thing that other people didn't find very cool at the time. So you managed to get into trouble with the DOJ in the US. So what was that like?
Well, in my defense, I thought because it was so easy, it couldn't be illegal. But also, that was a 10-year-old mind who didn't quite have the emotional maturity to understand what I was doing. It was a bit shocking because I don't think the FBI expected to see a 10-year-old girl in pigtails caught red-handed breaking into their systems. And I certainly did not expect to see well-built men in suits who were armed taking me away out of my school.
Oh,
I did get in trouble. Most of my family had pretty high security clearances because they dealt with either NASA, the CIA, or the NSA as employees. And that was not taken too kindly. And I had to make an agreement that I could not use a computer system until I turned 18 years of age, which I absolutely hated because I really liked technology. And I couldn't even use things like a Nintendo system with a handheld controller because they counted that as being a computer system. So it was interesting. It's not a time I would want to go back to without using computers. But at the same time, I do understand that there was a lot of misunderstanding about how powerful hackers could be.
yeah.
And part of that was down to movies back in the day where some US government officials thought that you could use a whistle over a public phone and launch a nuclear attack, which is not actually reality, but that was actually spoken about in a Senate hearing.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Okay. So there was a lot of popular fiction crossed over with real life things that made life difficult, and even now the perception of the moment you mention hackers and everybody else, everybody takes about 2 steps back and think, oh my heavens, we're in trouble here and things are going to go a bit wrong. So okay, so what did you do after you turned 18?
Well, the day after I turned 18, I bought a computer system,
Yay.
and that was great. And then I also took a military entrance exam and scored extremely high, missing one question. And the Air Force recruited me to do a kind of dual role between being an aircrew member called a loadmaster and also managing and maintaining 2 flying squadrons network computer systems. And after I was injured in the line of duty doing my aircrew role, I then was tasked to go to Space Command and handle what's called command and control systems, which deals with in certain types of intelligence and intelligence gathering. And one of my primary duties was also to ensure the safety of our space assets because they were a big risk and under threat by other nation states.
Okay. So and similarly, like you got into the military and did a particular job, then moved into something else because something else happened. Something similar happened to myself as well. When I joined the military, it was a case of, right, you're going in and it's going to be absolute raw warfare. And then it went from, right, we need folks that can understand a radio and radar and signals and everything else. And then it moved into electronic warfare and interception and everything else. So you kind of start off with one thing getting dragged into another thing. And by the end of my 10 years, it was a case of, well, what started off with just radio and radar, it's now communication systems, but communication system, computer level type systems. And it was a whole different bit of electronic warfare. And even now, a few years later on, way after I left, things like Snowden and everybody else, they threw a light on just how complex the electronic warfare bit has now become. And even now in what's this, 2021-ish, I think. In many cases, I don't think we've made much progress in defending ourselves. We've heard all the stories, we've moved on, but all the things that was a serious problem 20 years ago, even more than 20 years ago, is still a problem today. So, and this is now where I suppose, I don't want to say older folks, but older folks like us, that have been there, done that, gone through that, having to now retrospectively pay back the experience to the younger folks, because for them it's all brand new stuff. For us, it's like, I've seen this, been there, done that, and everything else. So we've moved on, and I think it's up to us to help the younger ones. Well, I'm saying younger ones, but the folks moving into the areas to help them out. Now, so a lot of the things that are happening to organizations now is about incident response. So something bad happens, somebody needs to investigate it, and then it starts moving into a process where you have to find out what's happened, how the recovery is going to happen, and what do we do next in terms of that particular process. Now, you were involved in a pretty major issue, in Saudi Arabia, where pretty devastating at the time that happens. Probably one of the world's biggest hacks or was it the world's biggest hack at the time?
It still probably is, because it even shut off 2/3 of the country's internet access. It halted emergency services. People couldn't get petrol because the supply lines were non-functional. And the world's most valuable company at the time had to go to old supply sheds and pull out typewriters because they had no systems whatsoever.
Okay, so fast forward a couple of years ago, fast forward a couple of years forward, a very similar thing happened to another giant, Maersk, where they had to literally go back to clipboards, WhatsApp, and everything else to try and work out. So this is things that just keep repeating themselves over and over and over again. So now I can understand that a lot of organizations have very complex systems, but when you boil down a lot of the stuff, and when I'm saying this stuff, is that if you can do a little bit of reconnaissance on the company, and by reconnaissance I mean scan their environment, you'll most likely discover a whole bunch of stuff that either the company's forgotten about, something they've commissioned, into a new thing, and they didn't put all the security things in place, and so on, or they failed to harden the systems and so on. And these are some of the major things we're looking at for pen testers and so on. So you've actually written a book on how to scan stuff. So Tell us about that. And did it land you in any hot water?
Kind of. Oh, so I wrote my first book, Down the Rabbit Hole: An OSINT Journey, Open Source Intelligence Gathering, and I picked as targets the Republican Party of the United States, the Democratic National Party, the UKIP party. It was a bit political. And also looking at my work with the Panama Papers law firm, Mossack Fonseca, and some additional data that I was able to show the ICIJ. And it takes you through various tools in the process of reconnaissance, finding the issues, and then also how to exploit some of those issues
Okay.
without a huge amount of effort. And then in my second book, it was based on using a particular tool called Census.io, and it goes through a lot of very interesting targets, including space assets, leveraging countrywide IoT cameras, and looking at the privacy issues when you've got tens of thousands of cameras with the same default credentials, so
Oh,
that
yes.
the police, in the case the Iranian police, could watch individuals. And of course, they had just turned their entire country and IoT cameras into a surveillance apparatus anybody could access. And going through some of those stages, even involving the North American power grid and part of the EU power grid, to
Okay.
show how easy it is to find these things. And I also put in some introductions to what IoT protocols are and industrial control system protocols are, because they're becoming more and more exposed to the internet.
Yeah. These are the kind of things we try and help folks with, to try and say, hey, here is a system, here is a framework. You can check your own exposure to this. I mean, none of these tools that we've mentioned so far, even tools like Shodan and everything else, it's just a matter of typing in the search term like Google and finding stuff. It's not like you have to be a super genius or mad genius or anything. It's just like, what can I find? And and start pulling on the threads and so on. So now that gives us a, a nice kind of framework, because we've already established at this point that there are frameworks out there. There are systems that we can leverage to use to find these kind of things. So it kind of brings a thing that if I've got a passion for doing this, if I've got a real interest of doing this, I haven't necessarily received formal training in this, so I can start digging into this. Okay, like you said, there are dangers. You are going to get into hot water if there isn't a specific program or something that you've signed up to say, I am part of this program. This is who I am. Please don't send the authorities after me. So the kind of things that I wanted to work on is like, if I'm going to be doing this, it's very easy to get into trouble. But if I'm a more mature person that's transitioning from one role to another role, from one industry to another industry, and so on. So there's kind of things that I bring to the party, like skills, maybe some experience, some real opportunities. Now, would you say in this modern era of cyber, what kind of skills would you think is most sought after? And I'm not talking about certs and stuff like that, but the kind of skills that employees will go, I want that. I want that person.
I think the ability to translate technical and complex terms in a way that management and executives can understand is a much sought after skill. Because it's one thing if you're talking about a packet capture, It's another thing if you try to put a picture of a packet capture on a presentation and it's in a room filled with executives, they're just going to go, "Why am I here? Why have you wasted my time?" So that is a very sought after skill. I don't believe really communications should be considered a soft skill anymore.
Okay.
Um, Another one is the ability to understand that uh, there are certain levels of risk and how they can actually affect the business or the organization. If you find an orphan server that somebody ignored and its only exposure is quite limited, then you wouldn't devote all of your resources to that versus if you find a system with your entire employee and vendor database with personal information out there on the internet that also contains medical information because it's an HR function for insurance purposes, then that would be something that you would have to understand would result in both reputational damage and fines from people like the ICO or be in violation of certain data privacy laws. So
Okay.
that would take up more of your resources. So understanding prioritization, risk as it equates to the business or organization itself, the ability to communicate those to make sure that you can devote the resources that are actually required. And then come the technical skills. And if you start out with a general understanding of a certain topic or technology, you can always go further with that particular technology as long as you have a basis.
Okay. Yeah, because because the for a lot of folks the basis of starting out, they may have started off in IT, just fixing things, and they may have worked their way up to be a manager, and so on, and eventually now, like you said, there's a couple of standards to adhere to because we're trying to get out of this Wild West thing, and the only way I think we're going to get out of this Wild West thing is where we can have a place where to say, right, there are certain types of stuff that we have to do. There's certain types of compliancy things that we have to do. Very few people like the compliancy things because it's a lot of paperwork, and it's not fun. Well, for me, it's not fun at all. But there are specific folks that have specific skills, some marvelous skills in being able to say, I know what to do. I know exactly how to write this down. And they may get some information from other folks and so on, and they get the message out. And I think, like you rightly mentioned, sometimes we have to speak to executives because they're the ones that's going to need to authorize the change within the organization. And if the change within the organization doesn't happen quick enough, bad things can happen. So I'm not going to talk about Florida at the moment because, yeah, things happen there. Things could have been done quicker and so on. But I anticipate there's loads of other places that are in a very similar position where there's stuff being exposed and they didn't actually address them during a penetration test or something like that. And I'm talking here from almost no background to those specific cases, but in the types of penetration testing and stuff that I've done before, it's always been a case of those things are out of scope. We only want you to test this nice shiny new thing, that we've put in because the standards guy or the compliance guy said we have to make sure that this thing needs to get tested. So, yeah. So and this is where this translation comes in, where we have tools. We can check if we've missed something. If we keep it to a too narrow scope, we're definitely going to miss something. But if we open up the scope too wide, it's going to be super expensive because it's going to take so long. Okay. Now, in the military, you know, everything, there's a rule for absolutely everything. There's a rule book for, you know, how to keep your hair, how shiny your shoes should be. You know, there's a uniform code. There is a code for absolutely everything. So, what was probably the hardest adjustment for you to do when you left the military?
Well,
Was it a major adjustment?
it was a bit of an adjustment because a lot of my family had been in the military, and I had gotten used to military itself. And when I got out, um, there weren't all these rules and things to fall back on. I had to, again, figure out how to dress myself, but in civilian clothes. And also, there was an adjustment period where I had been doing some really cool stuff in the military. And it was difficult to find a private company that had such cool, expensive technology to actually work with. And at first, it wasn't as exciting as, for example, being whisked away at the last minute's notice in the military for something that was extremely major, involving one country not liking another country,
Yeah.
versus, oh, I'm a civilian now. Oh, well, I guess I'll just drive to work and have a commute. So it was a bit boring at first.
Okay. So, and this is probably one of the things that a lot of veterans have asked us or current serving personnel and said, like, I'm looking to get into another career. Should I do it? Should I leave this comfort zone of the military where I have everything in it for me? I may be working in the government where, everything is taken care of. I just have this one thing to focus on. So I guess I suppose the thing that I want to ask is, um, once you leave, you should expect a lot of career changes.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There isn't the strict enlisted officer. You're the one that has to make your own career path
Yes.
moving forward. And you're also accountable and responsible for yourself. So that can be a pretty big change. But one thing I'd like to say to the folks who are hesitant to leave a certain career, whether that be in the military or civilian, is if you have the financial ability, as in you might not have a family yet, or you do, but your partner or circumstances affords you to take a bit of risk. Um, I very much believe that we have one life to live, and I try to take advantage of that because you get one chance. And I'm not the type of person that very much likes to just go, well, I'm safe here, so that's okay. But I also think about all of these other things that I want to do, that I want to learn, where I want to go and where I want to be in life. And sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone in order to do that.
Yeah, and that is a huge thing. So even for myself, when I worked for a, shall we just call it a normal company, and then directly after that joining a organized crime investigation team, where the pace was notched up quite a few notches
Yeah.
up, and it was super exciting. It felt at the beginning lots of stuff, new stuff to learn, and everything else. And so when that ended, it was a case of, okay, that was exciting. Oh, let's look for the next kind of thing that we're going to do. Probably something different. And I wouldn't, begrudge anybody that changes their career every couple of years. So maybe within 5 years, go and do something else. Go and experience something else. So, and now when you go and find, you go through the job lists and you go and see, okay, right, let's go find that next thing. How do you find, because there's a lot of instant stuff nowadays. And by instant, I mean you can go on a course for 5 days, 2 weeks, or something, get certified into something, and have the certification, right? So, how do you find things like certs versus skills, or is it often without certs but with experience?
Um, I am more a skills person. Now, there are ways that you can get certifications that start you on the journey to get you exposed to employers and financial opportunities that can help you get either more certs or to move up in your career. But I remember uh, a few times during my career where I have worked with folks who had fantastic skills but no certification. So sometimes they were a bit held behind. It was almost as if they didn't have, say, a college degree or something, which I never quite agreed with. On the other hand, I had worked with people who had loads of certs. Like one particular gentleman, he had a Cisco, I think it was called a CCIE, so it was like their top cert. And when talking to him, he did not know how to get his IP address on his own computer system.
All right.
And
Well,
yeah, so now, especially whenever I am in the role to hire people, I don't necessarily look at the certs that they have or just base it purely on that. I also have a tendency not to base their education solely on, say, a computer science degree. I found people with history backgrounds, journalism backgrounds, certain types of language backgrounds, depending on the role, are very useful and they know how to do research and really go after something. And so you don't have to have the newest snazzy degree. One of the best employees I ever had was his studies were in history.
okay.
And he could document things like you couldn't believe, and he could just research them and detail them so that I could make effective decisions. And he was always eager to learn.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I think an often um, overlooked part in cybersecurity is the mental health aspect of people as well, because um, there are professionals, mental health professionals, that are starting to specialize in this peculiar bits of cybersecurity, whereby folks get burned out really, really, really quickly if they're not careful, or being given the skills to help manage themselves. Because, like for example, a penetration test can be super stressful, and it can be long hours of very hard thinking and so on. And then once the project's over, it's just like this sudden release of everything, and it's like, okay, I need to do, and it kind of snowballs from that. So, and I'm really happy to see that there are some fantastic people um, seeing this opportunity of going forward with that. Now, in terms of roles and so on, there's like a gazillion things now. There's incident response, which requires you to have some management. Well, management in a sense of like project management, to be able to task people or set logical tasks out for a thing to happen. There may be people working in finance. There may be people working in, as an auditor, to be able to just go say, is your plan safe? Is this going to work? And so on. And very often, as well, some of the biggest blockers that we get is as human resources, because they were trying to say, right, I need to find somebody for a particular job. Give me a list of skills, or give me a list of certs that everybody's got, and we'll get a short list of those. We'll basically gatekeep the
Yeah,
whole process, and we lose valuable people.
absolutely. I think that there should be a special series of certifications and courses just for HR people to handle cyber jobs. because there needs to be a bit more flexibility. Now, we have already seen in other different types of jobs where they'll be like, hey, this particular technology you need 10 years of experience with, and it's only been out for 2 years.
Yeah,
Right? So there's
exactly.
those misunderstandings. There's also the misunderstandings of, well, you must have this cert. Well, why not the equivalent of the education and or skills of the cert? Because it also sets a financial barrier to people. So if you're going to take, for instance, a SANS course for 1 week, that's going to cost you with the certification and the travel, or just online, it's going to cost you 6 to 8 grand.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately, just don't have a spare 6 to 8 grand sitting around collecting dust. So there's actually it can be quite expensive for people to meet some of these requirements, and not every employer is willing to fund them, because not every employer sees the importance of trying to make sure that their employees are kept challenged and educated on the newest stuff.
Okay.
There's also the barrier of university. The UK pushed up its university fees. I originally came from the US, where university fees right now are just absolutely insane. I mean, it could be 100,000 a year. So nobody wants that kind of stuff. So I think that human resources needs to be a bit more flexible. I do understand that when you say must have this cert, must have this type of education, it can be a bit easier for HR because it's something that they can understand. But it also helps with this big skills gap of not getting enough cyber people in. Because when you look at one of these job notices, it's kind of intimidating. It's like, well, I know that, I know that. Oh, I don't know anything. I better not apply because I don't know that one thing.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get caught up. And also, nobody wants to get rejected. And the job process is not the easiest thing in the world, right? You got recruiters that are trying to get you in with jobs that make no sense, and they often don't understand what exactly the employer is looking for, because they get the information from human resources. So it's an endless cycle of um, can somebody who's familiar with this field just start writing job notices?
Okay.
And I think that we'd be able to fill some of those gaps.
Okay, so some of those gaps, for example, so say for example, you're a proven person in your field and everything, and you just happen to be one of those that don't have all the certs and everything else and so on. Would you say that there's a massive scope to be an advisor or to be in an advisory role for a very specific thing? Because I tend to see that sometimes somebody would get an external advisor in to do something because they're not so focused, for this, on the same thing all the time. So, what are your takes on being an advisor or a consultant for organizations?
Well, I agree with it because you also get an outside perspective, and it also can be a bit less expensive in the long run for an organization, because you're not having to bring somebody fully on board, having to worry about matching retirement funds and so forth. And I usually get a person or people that are very experienced and apply that experience from different areas into your organization. And that's something that would be a bit harder to hire for. And also for the advisory or consulting role person, it can be kind of exciting because you get to learn about a new type of business and apply your experience to that. So I do like that aspect. It's something that I do myself, and maybe that's a business idea for bringing in advisors for and consultants for job requirements with HR.
Okay, so some of these, let's put it this way, some of the consultancy gigs that we kind of get. So sometimes it may be a very formal one. So sometimes it may be an informal one. Um, so and everybody always asks about um, how much am I worth? How much money should I get? How much money should I ask for? Should I ask for 10,000 a day? Should I ask for 1,000 a day? Should I ask for 500 a day? Um, you know, it's sometimes a very difficult decision to make, especially if you're working for yourself or you're working as a consultant or you're having to engage in an organization to say, hey, I want to be your expert in that. Does it vary through the different engagements?
It can vary to a certain extent. Now, if you're doing something in your own country and there isn't very much travel costs included when you can travel freely again, then I tend to look at what not quite similar roles, but look at other job offers from the company on various career sites to gauge the general area of what they pay in, say, cyber. And then you might go, okay, and as an outside advisor, because it's going to be cheaper for them to hire me, at least on a temporary basis, I can capitalize on that and raise that up because I have to cover my own insurance, my own liability insurance, and so forth, 10, 20, 30% higher. If you
Okay.
have to go to a different country or there's significant travel expenses related to that, then you're going to have to also look at that. But at the same time, don't undervalue yourself too much just to get something, because then when you have your next client, they're going to expect a cheaper rate. Or if that client wants to hire you again, you're not going to be able to say, I know I said 250 a day 3 months ago, but I'm really, worth like 900. And they're going to be like, we're not going to pay you 900.
Yeah, exactly. So in all of this, in people trying to find gigs and so on, I have to do a shout out here to one of my own personal friends, Angus Red, as he's known on Twitter, and he is one of those that have gone through the military, done all the cyber training, and now actually trying to find people jobs that, and he understands both sides of the
Yes,
thing,
he does.
and
I love him.
yeah, and honestly, it's really hard to find somebody that really understands the thing. So anyway, so exciting things. So what kind of exciting things are you currently working on? Is there a new book coming out? Is there a new project? Is there somebody that's going to hide under the desk for your new report? Or what is some of the reports you've done recent?
Well, recently, my organization at the Middle East Institute was asked to write a cyber portion to the Abraham Peace Accords, which is the normalization of relations between Israeli and Arab nations, and then some European and Northern African nations, and in hopes of finally bringing a bit of peace or stability to the region. And although it was originally written for physical um, issues, we believe that there are a lot of cyber issues because unfortunately technology can be weaponized, as we've seen when you mentioned Florida, for
Yes.
example. And so we were asked by the National Security Council at the White House to write, as far as I'm aware, the world's first cyber peace accord for a region.
Okay.
And so we've been working on that. We've also been working with members of the Biden administration on helping to draft part of their cyber policy, because that's one big concern with the Biden administration, as it should be with all administrations nowadays around the world. I am working on a couple of books that I've been trying to finish off. One is a new technical book, which is still in the works. It's just run into some hiccups. Another is a book about operational leadership in cyber that will be co-written by retired Colonel J.C. Vega, who set up the U.S. Army Cyber Career Field.
Oh wow.
And Colonel Hayes Gibson, who currently teaches at West Point in systems and also is affiliated with the Harvard Business School.
Okay.
So we're trying to detail some of the leadership stuff that you need when dealing with digital security. And then I am attempting, it's taking forever, to finish up a draft proposal for my now new literary agent on a book that is about my career and some of the major cases and espionage and things that I faced, with a
Can't
working
wait.
title called The Woman Who Smashed Terrorists. So that's the working title right now,
Okay.
but we're getting to the final stretch. So I'll be describing some of the work I've been doing during COVID times. The first time as a civilian, I ran into cyber warfare with the North and South Koreans in the US, the Shamoon Saudi Arabian attacks, Boeing, there's a whole chapter dedicated to Boeing, and
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic.
things of that nature, and how I got started. So,
Okay. Okay. Well, that's going to be really cool to hear about that because, um, you know, because a lot of the things that you've been involved in, the types of work you've done, I've been involved in very similar types of stuff. And, it's really cool when somebody actually puts their thoughts down, make sure that they capture all of those kind of things as a teaching tool for other folks. It's like a case of this is not how you do it. Don't
yeah,
if you are going to be a leader in these kind of things, learn from these mistakes. Learn
yeah,
from what other folks did that was pretty terrible. Well, it turned out quite
yes,
terrible. It turned out, or the effects were quite terrible. Um, Now, while we're talking about turning out quite terrible, um, once you point out a broken bit in an organization, they tend not to send gifts of stuff. They tend to
no,
send the guard dogs straight away.
yes, no, no, nobody wants to be told that their baby is ugly,
That's
and
so much nicer.
right, yours was so much nicer. So, unfortunately, depending on where you are located in the world, you can be at a bit of a risk. So, for example, in the case of Boeing, I did all of my research from the Netherlands, so I am considered a legal ethical hacker within the laws here in the Netherlands. Um, but Boeing being a good, very big company and with an extremely ugly baby at the time and still experiencing some difficulties and understanding how encryption works, they were not too pleased. And they did a lot of, we'll just say, disparaging things, which
Right.
that's okay. I remember one time they were using the US government as a conduit and accused me of trying to extort them for money. And I was some sort of criminal. And I sent them back a picture that I had taken of the National Security Agency's director, General Nakasone, at a closed conference I was invited to. And I said, if you want, I could probably get you an autograph. Uh, because that's not what I'm looking for. I also said the only thing I think I would want out of this is the Netherlands. If you legally hack the Dutch government and report it correctly,
Yeah.
get a T-shirt that says "I hacked the Dutch government and all I got was this lousy T-shirt." So I told them I would like a shirt that says "I hacked Boeing and all I got was this lousy T-shirt." I still have not received the T-shirt.
Well, I wouldn't hold out.
I'm not going to hold out.
Yeah. So, no, it's been absolutely fantastic speaking to you this afternoon. Yes, this is such a wide area, and and there's a lot of folks looking to transition and everything else. And we're going to try and put some resources for some folks, online and so on, and just to try and help them gauge, what next and so on. So,
Yeah.
um, because yeah, cyber needs professionals, and
Absolutely.
and the professionals that they need is not necessarily hackers and so on.
No.
It's people with all kinds of different skills, people that can make plans, people that can just write proper documentation, or explain
Yes.
things, or because there's going to be a lot of consumers of that even in the next couple of years. So wow, well, it's been fantastic. Is there anything you want to ask us though?
Ooh. Um, let's see. Um, what are what are you all what are your projects? Give me a project other than Cyber Week that you are working on right now.
Well, we're working on trying to educate. No, it's probably not educate. Trying to give young people leaving university some skills before they hit the streets. So get them exposed to sort of real world scenarios, real world environments, so that it's not a case of when they arrive at a business or something that it's like, oh, I've got a master's degree, or I've got a degree of something, but this whole company environment is not what I imagined it would be. There's a lot wrong. There's a lot right. There's so much work, and there's always so much work to do. To do, and it's just trying to temper them a little bit to say, okay, yes, this is going to be a big project, but small chunks, one thing at a time. Don't try and do everything at once,
No.
because you can't. You can't. And then and be in a position where they have to be able to plan what they want to achieve, going forward. Because it's all very well starting at a new job. You're super excited and want to do everything, but you have to at that stage think, this is about me. I need to think about me. I need to think about me, my mental health, my happiness in my work. So those are the kind of things that we're going to try and get out to students. And so far we've reached out to nearly 300 students. There's another 100 and something in this next semester that's going to go. So and it's just trying to get them to say, hey, I've got this. I can do this. I can deal with or I'm expecting, I won't say a tragedy, but I can, I know what a dumpster fire is going to look like. I'm not going to panic, and and I'm going to try my very best to try and fix everything so it's not quite such a big dumpster fire in the end. So, yeah. Well, this talk will be live. Has been live on YouTube. It will be there for the foreseeable future, unless, of course, something happens and somebody demands it gets taken down. Ugly baby's parents and that. so, so yeah. But thank you so much. In joining us and sharing your insights in how you move from one career to doing something super exciting that you never thought you would be able to do or do next. So,
Yep.
oh well, thank you so much, and we'll see. Maybe we can have a session 2 of this at some stage.
Yes, absolutely, and hopefully in Scotland this time.
Yay! That'll be so perfect. So perfect. So, well, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to everybody. If they've got questions and so on, they can just add them to the YouTube feed and so on. And we'll do our best to try and answer them as we go along. Well, thank you very much, Chris, and
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Cheers, bye.
Bye bye.